In a world filled with injustice, war, and corruption, the idea of submitting to authority may seem not only outdated, but dangerous. And yet, the Bible calls believers to a radically different posture, one that neither compromises justice nor abandons faith. In Seeking Peace, Tiffany Gerdine wrestles with the tension in Romans 13, that all authority is allowed by God, and yet not all authority is godly. What does that mean for Christians living under unjust rule? For Palestinians under occupation? For believers navigating broken systems? This conversation with Tiffany Gerdine cuts through confusion and controversy. She explores how biblical submission is not about political endorsement, it's about spiritual positioning. It is about trusting that God's sovereignty still reigns, even in the shadow of failed leadership. This message isn't easy, but it is essential, especially for peacemakers. Many viewers today struggle with Romans 13, not only in the Middle East, but here at home. Whether it's a flawed justice system, government overreach, or political polarization, submission often feels like complicity. Submission doesn't mean staying silent. Submission doesn't mean saying yes to evil. Submission means saying yes to God. First, it's a heart posture, not a policy. A trust move, not a surrender. And in the context of peace building, it's often the most countercultural act of all.
This conversation with Dr. El-Amin reminded me why I wrote Seeking Peace. It wasn't to avoid hard topics. It was to face them with scripture open, heart surrendered, and truth uncompromised. Submission to authority isn't the end of resistance. It's the beginning of faithful witness. And in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, or any situation where governments fall short, our calling is not to control outcomes, but to remain anchored in God's will above all. One of the things I wrestled with while writing was, how do we call people to submit to authority when that authority is sometimes violent or unjust? Especially in the Holy Land, where people feel caught between forces they can't control.
That's a fair question, and the answer starts by remembering that Scripture never asks us to submit blindly. The Hebrew midwives in Exodus submitted to God by disobeying Pharaoh. Daniel submitted to God by refusing to bow. Submission in the Bible always has one condition: God comes first.
Yes, that's why I say in the book, submission to authority isn't the same as agreement with injustice. It's alignment with divine order in a fallen world. We're not choosing cowardice. We're choosing trust.
Exactly. People sometimes confuse submission with silence, but true biblical submission might mean speaking truth to power or enduring persecution without losing hope. Look at Paul. He submitted to Roman law and used his Roman citizenship to demand justice.
I'm glad you brought that up, because in today's climate, especially online, it's easy for Christians to think submission means silence or neutrality. But Jesus wasn't neutral. He was deeply compassionate and deeply courageous.
He was. He stood before Pilate, spoke no lies, offered no threats, and still told the truth. That's submission with spiritual strength. That's power under control.
That really connects to what I've seen from believers in the West Bank. I heard in a congregation where they read Romans 13 aloud while soldiers stood outside. They didn't flinch. They didn't curse. They just prayed and worshiped. That kind of submission doesn't come from fear. It comes from faith.
That's humbling. And it reminds us that submission is not about the government being righteous. It's about us staying righteous, no matter who's in power.
And I hope readers hear that in the book, because peace isn't just about what happens politically. It's about what we carry spiritually. The posture of peace starts with submission, not to man, but to the Lord.
That's it. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It's the presence of God's order in the middle of it.
This has been such a rich conversation. Thank you, Dr. El-Amin, for helping us unpack what submission really means, from scripture, not slogans.
Thank you for writing a book that dares to say the hard things, lovingly, biblically, and with deep conviction.